Hey everybody, my guest today is someone really special. I think I've been to several countries with this guy, at least several, and several states as well. Today, my guest is Luke Hendrickson. He is a keyboardist extraordinaire. He comes from a large family of very gifted musicians. His family has, worship leaders, singers, drummers, piano players, bass players, studio, engineers, producers. Luke was at the foundation of the House of Prayer in Kansas City. He played there for, over a decade plus some, and just recently, in the last, several years, he'll go into a little more detail, but in the last several years, he's been integral to Bethal out in California. And so, Luke, thank you for being here.
My pleasure, Nathan. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So, Luke, just tell everybody just a little bit, about yourself, just kind of how you got started with music, and maybe how you first got introduced to kind of spontaneous worship.
Sure. I was born at a very early age. It all started when I was very young.
You were probably born a freak with no hair or teeth.
Yeah, that's true. We look cute in one way, but I think we could look ugly if you from another perspective. So I was born in the 80s. My mom and dad are worship leaders, as you had mentioned, and they were a part of a church in Kansas City, pastored by a guy named Mike Bethal. Some of you may know him. And so I grew up in a culture of worship. It's kind of all that I've ever known. And so to have a career choice, in my mind, really there's only one choice, and that was worship. It wasn't really something that I debated or considered much on. We were homeschooled. We traveled with mom and dad. They were itinerant ministers who went all over the place. So we brought our school with us, and we began to learn instruments at a young age and would play behind mom and dad. And it was a low pressure situation because it was in a safe place. You're with family, and so you could grow together. And as well as it wasn't a large platform back in those days. You were able to experiment without broadcasting live on television or something like that. You could really try to develop your sound without the pressure of a program or something like that. So that was really helpful. That was through the 90s. And then about 99, 2000, IHOP started in Kansas City, the House of Prayer there. So our family moved from rural Wisconsin. We were up there for a season in the 90s, and we came back down to Kansas City and joined the House of Prayer. And it was a really unique time where we were developing something that had never happened before, at least for maybe a few thousand years since King David.
Yeah. And
so trying to develop, what does it look like to do a 2-hour worship set with singing the scriptures? And, there's so many directions you could take with it. And so in those early days, it was fun. It was a little wild, a lot of surprises, a lot of mistakes, of course, but you don't get anywhere. You don't grow without a license to make mistakes. And so we made plenty of those, and I think we developed some pretty wonderful seasons of fruit through that season. So we were musicians for first, and then later years, around maybe the 2000s area, we were in our late teens, early 20s, siblings. There's 4 of us, by the way.
Yep.
We all began to start recording, and it was kind of a side hobby at first. Hey, guess what? We got some software. We can record ourselves, and it was just a fun tool. And then it turned into something where, hey, we can actually create art. It's not just gear, it's art that we're able to produce. And so we started doing our own stuff first, and our friends heard it, and our friends said, hey, can you pay me $100 and make a demo for me? And we said, gladly. We're homeschooled kids with not a lot of money. $100 was a lot.
Ton of money.
Yeah, that's right. And so we were able to live for free at mom and dad's house. So we put all that money right back into more gear. Our experience grew with the gear. It was always neck and neck. You know, you do everything debt free,
Yep.
no loans, and you grow with the gear. And so it was a beautiful time where, you know, there's a synergy that happens when you're with other people, and you can go a lot further.
Yeah.
And so those years at IHOP, there were hundreds of musicians and singers in that culture, and we're able to inspire one another and come up with new perspectives and share what we're learning. And so it was a high growth opportunity.
You know what? Let's stop there for a second. I actually want you to stop there for a second because I don't want to pass this up.
Yeah.
Because I think that there is a level of good camaraderie and good competition. Do you know what I mean? Like I'm not talking about like, you know, the one thing that I did notice when I was at the House of Prayer for me was like being a musician, a drummer, or a singer, you were always looking at the other people. At least this was for me. I was never looking at them as the competition. You know what I mean? Like I was never looking at a worship leader or another singer or another drummer and going, oh man, that guy's going to take my place. Right. But it was always like, wow, I just heard that fill that Paco just did, or I just heard that fill that Travis Dame did, or I saw that chord, you know, or that sound that, you know, John Thurlow just did, or whoever just did. And it would spur you on, you know, to be better, because there were people, like you just said, that there was that, I think the key word is that there's synergy, that there's something when you're in a group of people that I feel like maybe people are scared, because I've seen this sometimes, that people are maybe scared to be with a group of people, showing people where they're at, still learning. Right? They're afraid, but maybe that you said something earlier too, which is, hey, we were in a safe environment. And even, I'm just going to say this for leaders, and if you're in charge somewhere, create a place and value safety to fail, and value safety, you know, and value everybody going, hey, no, this is a safe environment for you to fail in. This is a safe environment for us to show, you know, what we got, and not have, you know, ridicule, and not have the fear of judgment, or, you know, like we want to evaluate one another, but not to the place of that we're discouraging. We're always trying to build up and encourage, and that, man, just get in a group of people, find a group of people that you can grow together. And I mean, I can't tell you, I mean, Luke, you probably know this too, but how many people I saw grow because of just day in, day out, just, you know, I'm gonna throw a name out. Nobody's gonna know who this person is. You'll know who they are, but nobody else is gonna know who this person is. But like a guy like Sean Henderson going from, okay, he played like once a week, to, wow, he's playing every set with Justin Rizzo, right? Like he grew so very quick that I felt like there were people who, specifically leaders and other musicians, who brought people under their wing, right? And encourage them and let them grow in that place. But I think that's so important, what you said about synergy, and just even as a group growing together, seeing those people. Do you have anything else to say about that? I thought that was so cool that you said that, because it's so true.
Yeah, it really is. Camaraderie is important. And I think a healthy perspective, somebody who's healthy that sees greatness, is inspired. Somebody who's healthy that sees greatness is inspired. Somebody who is unhealthy that sees greatness gets jealous and tries to squelch those that are around them. So,
yeah, say that again. Say that whole thing again. I'm gonna pull a Bethal. Yeah. Say the whole thing again.
People that are healthy who see greatness are inspired. People who are unhealthy that see greatness get jealous. And so, you know, we've all encountered the former and the latter. Which one would you choose? Mm-hmm. You know, I would definitely choose the one where I'm hanging out with healthy people that are encouraging one another, that are there to see my growth, my benefit. There are a few people in my life that have really been catalysts to putting me over the edge of greatness. And it was people who believed in me more than I believed in myself. People who believed in me more than I believed in myself. I err on the side of insecurity than arrogance generally. Not all the time, but generally I err on the side of insecurity rather than arrogance. And I think most people would be that. I think most of us need somebody or a coach, a cheerleader that is there and saying, hey, I see this in you. You may not see it, but I see it in you. And if you can get around people like that, you're going to go a whole lot further. You don't want to get around people that are jealous. That is not going to be a healthy environment, not only for you, but for the growth of, people under you. Hopefully we all are aspiring to become leaders and trying to not just become great, but grow people great under us.
Yes, man, that's so true. And I think as far as a person that's a coach, I remember, being in apprenticeship, when I was younger, doing apprenticeship as a construction worker, we have an apprenticeship program where you're actually directly working with another person. And I remember the guy that was training me said, hey, Nathan, my end goal is that you are better than me when I'm done with you. And I am going to do everything that I can. I'm going to lay my life down. And I mean, I could tell that like, hey, this person's job was lay their life down so that when they were done with me, I was better than even they were. And there wasn't that insecurity of, hey, I'm really doing everything I can. But I think that's so true, man. Finding coaches and being a coach. I think you need both. Like I need to find somebody that can encourage me, but also I should always be finding folks that I can encourage and build them up in the gift that God's given them.
There's something really healthy about teaching somebody or something, teaching subject matter. There have been several seasons in my life where I've had opportunities to teach something, and I find myself questioning everything before I have to teach it, because if you don't know it inside and outside, frontwards and backwards, it's that teaching experience is going to feel pretty insecure and pretty awkward. And so preparing to teach something actually taught me while I was teaching. I was getting taught while I was teaching.
Yes.
I learned the material better in that way than if I wouldn't have taught it. So I would highly recommend getting taught, but no matter where you're at, whether you're a pro or a novice, work on exercising that gift in somebody else and multiplying that gift in somebody else. I don't think we need a title or a degree to start discipling. Jesus's disciples were fresh off the boat when they got started, man. They didn't get a 4-year program before getting active. It was a very, very quick on-ramp.
Yes.
Lots of mistakes mid-process, and that was okay. It was okay because they were in a safe place.
Yeah, and I think Mike Bethal, when he would teach, would always use this phrase. He would always talk about ready, fire, aim. Ready, fire, aim. Like I can't tell you how many times I remember being in a big meeting, but usually it was always in those back room kind of meetings where Mike would always go, no, we need to actually be doing stuff and not like, hey, let's actually put some things into action, and then we'll adjust afterwards. And I think that I usually say the two things that you need to kind of have to teach somebody /train /coach, whatever that is you need to be one step ahead of them, and they need to be following you. At one level, like I just need to be just one step ahead of you and to make sure you're actually going to follow me. And so I do think that there is a need for people to grow in education. But I don't think the like you're right. You don't need your 2-year certificate before you can go, if I'm talking about 20-year-old me, I don't have to have a degree to talk to the 18-year-old.
That's right.
You know what I mean? Like, hey, no, we can actually help and create, like you said, that safe environment of synergy that causes, and I mean, I'm just thinking about this now, that just causes, most of the people are on a worship team of some kind, even if it's 2 or 3 people, we've all been there where it's just 2 or 3 people. It's like, no, we as a group are safe. We can cause that synergy and we could lead one another. And I think, I'm thinking of this as you spoke, is that, there's places where we are going to, like I said, be coached and coach. And even in that sort of situation, I can't imagine that in your family that, one of your brothers, Marcus, isn't teaching you something and you're teaching him something. And then, you know, Brother John is teaching you something and you're teaching him, that there's this level of give and take, of trusting one another and serving one another.
Yeah. And there's a phrase, you could be a big fish in a small pond, or it can be a small fish in a big pond. And if you find that you are the big fish in a small pond, your growth curve is going to be very slow, if not stagnant. Your growth curve is going to be very slow if you are the big fish in a little pond. So how do we fix that? How do we continue to accelerate the growth curve? Put yourself in an environment where you are not the best. Put yourself in a community where you are not the best. And you're going to be
Very vulnerable.
intentionally exposing yourself to people that are greater than you. And if you live in a small town, if you are in a small community where there's not a lot of growth opportunities or challenges in front of you, and you want to grow, move. Find a place that it's better. But some people actually are very content, and that's okay. I don't think all of us have that like fearless courage to pioneer like Christopher Columbus. You know, there's only a few people that are wanting to really chase the impossible. If you are wanting to grow,
that's good advice.
Be a fish in a bigger pond.
Yeah, you know, and I actually just in the last the last week or two, I had a conversation with one of our singers who's at the House of Prayer here in St. Louis, and she's been going to IHOP U in Kansas City the last 2 years, and she actually just got her 2-year program, and she was expecting to move back, and excuse me, and she just recently told me, she's like, oh, you know what? I feel like I'm not sure. I feel like I'm still supposed to be there. Like there's something more for me. And you know what I told her? I said, you know what? You need to probably stay there for a few more years and get trained up really good. Like go there with the intention, because she said I was going to, I'm coming back. Like when I moved to Kansas City in 2005, I moved to Kansas City with the intention of being there for 6 months and moving back. Getting some training, taking a little break from doing the prayer room here. And I was there for 10 years. And you know what? That 10 years spent at Kansas City was the best investment for St. Louis I've ever made.
Amen.
Like it was a good investment. I went there to get trained. Even if people go, hey, maybe you need to go to Bethel. Maybe you need to go to Morning Star. Maybe you need to go to name that worship school, name that thing. Do you know what I mean? Maybe you need to go for a few years so that you'll be, I hate saying this, like you're useful as is, but more useful. You know what I mean? Like be more useful for the thing that you have. So I love that you said that. Become a little fish somewhere. You know, because I was a big deal in St. Louis, but you go to Kansas City, it's like, oh shoot, you're not a big deal anymore, which is great. I mean, that's a great feeling to have of, wow, there's people better, like so much better than me. And so I encouraged her, hey, go back for a few years, get taught, learn, but don't just go there. And I think when you go and you do that, don't go for the sole purpose of you learning something. And I always believe this, never learn for yourself. Always learn so you can hand it to somebody else. Always get the information. Don't get bored by learning. Like, oh, I've heard this before. Well, great. Have you heard it enough to where you can teach it? Like you said, do you know the material enough to where backwards, inside out, forwards, whatever way it is, that if a kid asks you a question, you can explain it to them. I'm always like, people, especially if you believe, that you're a leader, if you believe that God has called you to be a leader, whatever that looks like, leaders, you need to know the material. You need to really be able to explain it. And this person believes, the girl that I'm talking about, the woman I'm talking about, she knows she's supposed to be a leader. So I said, listen, if you're a leader, do the work, get in there, devote yourself, to prayer, devote yourself to worship, devote yourself to learning so that you'll be useful. And I think that's great. Just the advice of move. If you need to move to become that little fish, move.
Yep.
Okay. Do you have anything more to share about that? If not, I'll go on to another question.
Let's move on.
That was great, man. So actually, you didn't say, I think I did say that you're in Bethel. How long have you been there?
About 8.5 years.
Oh man, wow. Yeah,
Yeah.
you've been there for a
Ti-
while.
Time flies, man. Time
Yeah,
flies.
I think, like I said, I've been in St. Louis for the last 4 years. So
Wow.
2000,
I was,
yeah, 50,
I was,
yeah.
I was born in St. Louis, man.
Yeah, no, I know.
That's where it all
You have a
started.
rich history.
My grandpa had a church there,
Yes.
New Covenant Church.
I mean, it's a famous church.
Yep.
It birthed almost all the churches in St. Louis. It is the
Yeah.
church.
Yeah.
It's the mother church. But yeah,
Yep.
so you've been in Bethel and
Yeah. Moved there about 8.5 years ago. I manage broadcast audio for the church and Bethel Music. So all the like live worship stuff is filtered through this department. This is currently the studio where we capture our live content. The stage is just behind me on the other side of that wall, the
wow.
stage church.
But you also though, beyond doing the production, I know that you also, one of the things that maybe people don't realize as well is that you've been one of the main production people behind the One Things with our records and live records, that you've been one of the integral people with that. And you also go on tour. Like you go on tour not just as a sound guy, you go on tour as a keyboard guy, and you've played with, you've played with some of the people, at least in today's world. You've played with some of the greats.
Yep. So keyboard playing was my first love, and the older I get, it's becoming production. Is my first love. Next to God and my wife, of course. So I love playing keys. I still play keys here at Bethel, play on records and tour and stuff. But I would say, the majority of my time, 80% of my time is in production world. And yes, still working with IHOP from time to time.
Yeah. I know. Whenever One Thing comes around, I always find myself behind stage and there's Luke.
Yep.
Just recorded in his trailer.
This is gonna be the first year where it's not happening. So it's
it's bizarre.
Yeah, kind of unusual. First time in 20 plus years, I think.
I know. I'm not gonna know what to do. It's like every year that's where I'm at, even if I'm not there.
Yeah.
So let me ask you, what do you think, what do you think are some of like the, common misconceptions or myths, or what do you think are some hurdles when it comes to like spontaneous prophetic, worship? What are some things that you think that most people either get hung up about, or you think, or maybe even some things that were when you grow up in it, it's a little different. Do you know what I mean? But like, what are some questions that you've gotten? Are there any?
Spontaneous worship. It's a big subject, isn't it?
Oh no, and I say this all the time. I feel like if there isn't a more nebulous, do you know what I mean, subject in that it's very hard to nail down, and even people's terminology about what it is, what it isn't, and things like that. So I mean, what are some things that if you had to go, wow, these are some misconceptions or ways that can demystify it? What do you think?
Yeah.
I know it's a big one.
Yeah. Well, we talked about making a safe place. If you are in spontaneous worship on your own, there are no rules. You are the leader and you are the follower. You're serving and leading at the same time. So I think the most selfish and the safest way to do it is to do it by yourself.
Yeah.
It gets more complicated when you add people.
Yes.
I love church if it weren't for the people. It's a joke, obviously. When you add people to the team, that's when the challenges happen. When you're by yourself, there's very few challenges. The only challenge is stirring up the well of your soul. I guess when you're on your own, like, who is Luke Hendrickson at the soul level?
Yeah.
If we're going to put the team aside, who is Luke Hendrickson at the soul level, and what does his heart say? And how am I going to communicate that with word or with music? And so that is the greatest challenge, I think, is how do I dig up that well and what is in there? And sometimes it's good and sometimes it's bad. And sometimes it just feels empty because you haven't cultivated it. So hopefully we can find a inspiration zone where it is easy to extract that stuff out of it. Get stress low in our lives, lower the stress. get a good night's sleep, and you know, you want to be comfortable. Comfortable is what creates inspiration, I think. And don't be afraid to look for inspiration. You know, of
Yeah.
course, the Bible is amazing. The Lord will give it to you. Your dream life will give it to you. Conversation with your friends will give it to you. A movie or a new record. So, like, always be looking for inspiration. Always be looking for beauty. And usually those are catalysts to launching something that you didn't even know about.
Yeah.
I'll finish writing a song or producing something, and I'm like, if I wouldn't have dug that well, that art would never exist. But it was work. I dug, and suddenly something beautiful came out that I didn't even know was inside of me. It was always in there. It's like a child was always inside of me, but he never got to get out until I actually dug.
Yeah.
So the reward of seeing some art on the other side of it inspires you to want to do it again. It's like golfing. I believe you play golf, don't you? When you get
not as good as you or Isaac.
When you get a killer drive down the fairway that rolls right up to the green, that one good hit will make up for 100 bad hits.
All of my other hits.
And so I think art is the same way. When you cultivate and you see something beautiful come out of your soul, come out of who you are, it inspires to want to go do it again. And so that's the solo aspect.
Yeah.
When you add the team in, man, there's 1,000 points on that one. But
yeah, and just from what you just said right there, the idea of that, you know, I think that we can bring in some of the stuff that you even said earlier, the idea of the person that finds greatness in someone else inspiring.
Yeah.
Right? That when you're in an aspect of a team of people who inspire you and are inspired by you, it's you saying the same thing, like either the child coming out of me or the color coming out of me or whatever that is, that we get to mix those like a tapestry. Do you know what I mean? That there's things that get woven together, and that I am in a good way provoking them to inspiration. And so, I mean, just so you know, one of the ways that with prophetic or spontaneous worship, one of the phrases that I always say, to me, prophetic worship or spontaneous prophetic worship is expressing the impressions of the Holy Spirit. And so my job is to express. And so I want to be able to not be hindered in my ability to express. I don't want to be hindered in my ability to be inspired, right? By specifically the Holy Spirit, but also with those other people. I want to be inspired and inspire both from the Lord and other people, so that we as a group can express together. That might, I mean, I don't know how many times you've experienced this, but I know this for a fact, that I've been on teams where it'll be totally different people, right? And the dynamic of the individuals who are involved will change that sound, will change the expression. It could be the exact same song. We're using the same bones, right? We're using the same bed, but what's coming out of it, the same canvas, but what's coming out of that is very different based on the inspiration, or based on the provoking in a good way. Do you know what I mean? Provoking in a good way. And I think that's awesome.
Yeah, I think there is sometimes a misconception of prophetic worship is always inspiring and always fun. And if I don't feel it, I don't do it.
Yes.
You know?
Keep talking about that. That's actually the biggest question I always get, which is, how do I, like, especially from singers, how do I feel it? Like, how do I know I'm doing it? Will I feel it? Will I always feel it? Just speak into that. That is so, I always forget that, because I have the what do they call that? The shortcoming of knowledge, right? Where you know it already. So you never think about it because you already know it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whatever. So talk about that, specifically that.
Yeah. Well, the human heart is fickle. We are very easily inspired and very easily bored. You know, you've got the Israelites wandering in the wilderness, and they've got a ball of fire and a giant cloud leading them with miracles on every side constantly, and they forget God, and they grumble against God after they've seen countless miracles. The human heart hasn't changed. We're still that way. We see a giant breakthrough with the Lord intervenes into our lives, and we're like, man, you're the greatest thing ever, and then 6 months later we're depressed again, and we doubt if God's even real. Maybe, but he's not active in my life. He doesn't see me anymore. So we're so fickle in that way. And so I think with worship music, it's the same thing, where we're just looking for that dopamine hit. We're looking
Yes.
for that memory of the greatness, and anything less than that, we basically just want to throw in the trash, and we say, I just want to get into the inspiration zone. And I think the 24 elders and the 4 living creatures, they are in constant inspiration mode. They are holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty, who was and is to come. They are in constant inspiration mode because they're face to face with the Father. Right now, I would love to be face to face with the Father without any kind of obstacle in the way. But the reality is we're human, and we're in a fallen world, and there's going to be stuff come to us. You got to pay your bills. You argued with your sister. Your pastor is X, Y, and Z. Your boss is this, and all this traffic is coming into the finite human mind and soul. And so we're going to have to contend with distractions and contend with other things that are trying to get in the way with that. So I think the ideal is, yes, let's stay inspired all the time, but that's not reality, at least from my perspective. I hope it's that way in the future, but for my life, it hasn't been that way. So you got to be okay with working hard.
Yeah.
There's actually a school down in Southern Missouri. I think it's called like this. The nickname is like the School of Hard Work, where
School of the Ozarks.
Yeah, it's a legit university, and you pay for it debt free, because while you're in school, they also have jobs in the school, and at the end, you leave the school without debt. It's like it's the best model in the whole world. I'm like, everybody should be doing that.
Yeah. School of the Ozarks down. Yeah, we have several people that from St. Louis that have gone there. Done just amazing. That.
Hard work is healthy for us. It makes you stronger. It aligns your values. If life is easy all the time, then I don't think you have healthy values. You don't see from good perspectives. So I think it's important to work hard, and you're going to see fruit on the other side. Like, there are many times when there's a spontaneous moment that's not going so well, but you push in and you say, I'm going to dig this. I'm going to dig for the gold. And not every time, but a lot of times the gold happens. But humans, they want the formula. They want the math formula, and that's not how art works. Art isn't math.
That's not how relationships work either.
Art and math are just so separate from one another. They say music is math, and yeah, it is, but I think it's more art than it is math.
It's very theoretical math. Meaning, and I think one of the phrases that I usually do is, without traction, there's no movement. Right? Without resistance, like with your tire, if there isn't resistance between the tire and the road, if there's zero resistance, you're not going to go anywhere. You have to actually push. The tire actually has to have resistance and push against the ground so that it gets somewhere. The only way movement happens is if there is resistance. There has to be some sort of resistance so that traction can be made. And I think that I've said this phrase before as well, but on the other side of stupid is something glorious. Meaning, on the other side of this feels so dumb and uninspired, trying to break through this wall, right? Of feeling like, oh, am I actually doing it? Am I actually like, oh, this is so boring? You know what I mean? On the other side of that boredom, on the other side of that is actually, if you just said it, if you break through that, there's something that actually is good on the other side. Most people just don't want to work. You know what I mean? They just don't want to break through it. That is a great, that's great clarity on that is a huge misconception. And I get that question. How do I know I'm actually doing it? Will I feel it? Do I feel it? That's probably the number one question I get asked more than anything. So
humans want to be validated. They're looking for somebody to pat them on the back and say, tell me I did a good job. And art, there is no right or wrong with art. And so one person can say, you did a great job, and the other person could say, that's terrible. And so if we live by the praise of man, we'll die by the praise of man. Like, I don't think we can't let somebody's telling us whether or not we did a good job, like, dictate whether or not we're going to do something. Like it's
Mhm.
internal motivation, an internal thing where the Lord and our identity is following inspiration. There's
Yes.
inspiration inside, and we're chasing that.
And that's what I think one of the one of the things that I remember Mike Bickle would always say is that, hey, you know, he loves me, I love him, therefore I'm successful. You know, he
Amen.
loves me, I love him, therefore I'm successful. And that the idea of that success, because even our worship, as worship team, as worship members, our success is based on, did I try to connect? Did I try to not just follow the formula of, oh, I sing this verse, I sing this chorus, I do this thing, but no, my heart was always with the understanding of whether something amazing happens or not.
Yeah.
Did I connect, or did I try to connect? Right?
Yeah.
Was my heart reaching? Right? Was my heart reaching for something more and actually reaching for the Lord? So moving from, you know, maybe misconceptions, what are some qualities that you look for? We'll start with worship leaders, but what are both some like character qualities? So I'll ask you both sides. What are some like character qualities you look for in a worship leader that you're like, I admire these, and I these are number one things for me? What are qualities, like character qualities, and what are like actual, like, you know, skill qualities? What are the two things? What are the things that you're looking for? Let's start with like character qualities. What are like some character qualities that you always, you know, value? Because I want to give worship leaders, specifically, I want to give worship leaders, singers, and musicians, I want to give them targets to aim for. Do you know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like, I want that quality, or wow, I have that. Thank you.
A couple words come to mind. Fearlessness is highly valued in my book. If you have leaders that operate under fear, it's usually fear about them failing, fear about somebody getting better than them, fear about their team looking bad. There are no scenarios with those that end up good. There are zero scenarios where that ends up good. My favorite people to lead with are those who are fearless, those who are not afraid to share their heart, not afraid to go after something, not afraid to take a risk, and not afraid of their team members becoming great. I think another one is, I like leaders who have vision. Have vision. They're not coasting through life, but they're chasing a goal. They're chasing a call in their life. They're chasing a prophetic word. They're chasing a conviction. That's a good one. I think another one is one that has a father's heart, and that could be male or female, but one who has a father's heart, where they see the people that they work with as family. I got advice years ago. They said, treat everybody like you're their pastor. Treat everybody like you're their pastor. If you say, well, I want to be a pastor, but nobody's given me a position, nobody has validated me, it's like, you don't need validation to do it. You can be everybody's pastor all the time if you want to. I think having a leader that sees their people as a family member, but not as an asset, not as a stepping stone to their own personal greatness, not as just a vehicle to project their name further. I think those are the people I would want to be with.
Yeah, those are great qualities. So what are some maybe technical qualities? I mean, you work with worship leaders who are both who are instrumentalists and non-instrumentalists.
Yep.
So maybe speak, you know, because I have had some people speak to people who are instrumentalists. Maybe speak to, what are some qualities as a worship leader who maybe isn't an instrumentalist, but they are a worship leader. Maybe they just sing. What are some things that they should probably know and or work on?
Yeah, I've seen greatness with leaders who lead with an instrument, and greatness with leaders who don't lead with an instrument. So I think I'm actually completely indifferent on whether or not they lead with an instrument. I don't care at all. I think what I care about is, this may not be what you're looking for, but what I care about most is those who are songwriters. I don't want to lead worship with somebody who is just singing a set list. That is like one of the most boring things in the world.
Glorified karaoke.
I'm just, I could press a CD right now and have the same experience.
Yes.
I have no desire to do that. I think the thing that inspires me most technically with the worship leaders is one that is a songwriter, one that's good with melodies, one that's good with lyrics, and again, one that wants to take that risk.
Mm.
And that happens, of course, obviously, by they have to have a good ear, they have to have good feel with music. Not everybody who's good at this understands all the theory, but they do have natural intuition. Natural intuition. There are a few worship leaders that I've worked with, but they have the whole package, and
that's always nice.
It's better to have that. It's always better to have that.
They can say, it's gonna go to the C. It'll do a B. It'll do then the accidental B flat as a transition. Then it'll, you know what I mean? Yeah, they can.
If they can hear chord changes and they can call out chord changes with hands or something like that, it's always helpful, but not absolutely essential for greatness. But I have seen the percentage of success being higher when you have a greater musical understanding, as well as a greater sound mixing language communication ability, where they're like, hey, I know how to communicate about EQ or compression or reverb or something like that. I have seen them to be more successful with their inner mixes when they understand that language.
Mm. Yeah. So what are some things that if you had to encourage musicians, because you've worked as kind of an MD, as a musical director as well, correct? I feel like you've definitely done musical direction.
Yeah, that's not my preference.
I know, but if you were to say, like, if I was to be the worship leader and I had to put a group of musicians together, I tend to usually MD for myself. But
yeah, the number one thing I would say is learn the record, play it like the record.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a side of, we value songwriting, but just as much as that is learn the record like that. You at Bethel anyway, you don't get on the worship team if you can't play the same parts, but not just the same parts as the record, but also the same tone.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people try to play the same solo, play the same drum fill, play the same piano part, but they forget about the second part, which in our opinion is just as important, and that is, did you play it with the right tone? Mm-hmm. So you shred on the guitar that same solo, but your tone is off. Your delay, your wet dry on your delay is wrong. Your overdrive is wrong. Well, you fail. Mm-hmm. But I played the right notes. Well, you failed because you didn't play with the right tone. Mm-hmm. And so for us out here, like, tone is so important. Well, I played the same piano line. Well, it's a piano line, but it's the wrong tone.
There's no compression on that piano.
You're not using the right amount of compression, or you didn't blend a dulcimer with it, or you didn't open up the pad filter on the chorus. You kept it dark the whole time. Well, but I was playing the right notes. It doesn't matter. Like, in order to get on the team here, you have to play the right notes and you have to play at the right tone. And that's learning the record. So that's number one. Mm-hmm. Instead of a bad guy on your worship team telling you what you did wrong, this way it's the record that tells you what you did wrong. There's no like dictator on our team that says, you do this, you messed up here. No, the thing that keeps us, our plumb line, or keeps us going in the same direction is, did you learn the record? Yeah. And the record is what keeps us accountable. Now, when you learn that, then you have a license to go over here and create. Correct. But you don't really have a license to go over here until you play the record with the right part. So I would say, as a worship team member, learn the record, and that includes the parts and the tone.
Mm. Yeah, I remember being on a worship team before I came to Kansas City, and that was the worship leader there was like, I want you to learn the parts so that you can forget them, meaning you're not thinking about the parts.
Yeah.
Right? You can actually, A section, B section, C section. At any point, we can go to A section, B section, C section, right? At any point, I could play it like a pack mule and go from A to B, right? Yeah. Or at any point, the guy could say chorus, or say do the turnaround, or he could say whatever, and very quickly we knew the parts, we knew the changes, right? Yep. We knew that stuff, so that we were, we had the flexibility and we had fluidity, so we weren't worried. You know what I mean? Our brains weren't there, so we could be creative, right? Yeah. I'd gotten the parts, I'd gotten the tone, so that at any moment I could go, oh, I can actually be creative now, because that's not, my brain isn't focused, my energy right? My current energy is not going towards trying to, because I've made it so much a part of myself that I'm not worried about that. And it's funny that you say that, because it's like, yeah, when you think about Bethel, at least I think about Bethel, I don't go, oh wow, they're gonna be so by the book, or so, oh, they have to know these parts exactly the same way, blah blah blah. But I see that, if anybody's really watching you guys, if they're really watching and seeing, they know what an asset that frame of mind is, right?
Yeah.
They can see it. The proof's in the pudding. Your services, I literally can't remember the last time that I watched one of your services and any song was really A to B. Do you know what I mean? Where it was really A to B.
Yeah.
Now, mind you, I don't watch maybe every service, but when I'm watching, I'm going, oh my gosh, okay, well, Amanda's definitely not doing that song like the record. That's why there's 20 different versions on, multi-tracks and loop community, is because there's multiple different versions that were recorded that are completely different, that, ended up finding their way into the wild. And so I think that's a great, so musicians, actually emulate other people, listen to how they do stuff, listen to how they play stuff, listen to how they get their tone. And specifically, I want you to talk to piano players, because I think that piano players are in a unique position that may be different than maybe a guitarist or a bass player or a drummer, in that you guys have things now, like tools at your disposal now, that are so easy, like in terms of main stage or Omnisphere or Ableton Live, that there are lots of programs now that you can use to get these new sounds that maybe weren't possible 10, 15 years ago. Could you speak just into that at all? Like what are some of your thoughts? I know there's entire courses. Like I have several courses from Ian McIntosh just on that, and guess what? I don't even play piano, but I've watched them all.
Yeah. We live in the golden era for musicians, producers, songwriters. There's no better time than today to be alive.
Yeah.
And here's why. Quality is at an all-time high and price is at an all-time low. And they're doing this at the same time, where quality is increasing and price is decreasing. And so the accessibility for greatness is pretty much available to anybody. GarageBand on an iPhone is fantastic, and you can produce full-on records with GarageBand, which is free if you have a phone. So the tools available have never been better. So I'm a huge fan of resourcing your teams with the best that's available. Yeah. And the best doesn't always mean expensive. The best can be cheap. You mentioned MainStage, that's $30, and it has unbelievable flexibility. You can, it comes with great sounds stock, but you can add on anything that you want. MainStage has an add-on thing called an auto sampler, and you can sample any analog synth into MainStage. So you say, well, I have a vintage Juno keyboard with this awesome patch, and I don't want to be traveling with that all the time. No problem. You just hook it up to your computer and you hit go, and it'll auto sample your analog stuff into a laptop. So you can travel, and you don't have to keep your keyboard with you anymore. It's way more flexible and way cheaper. So I highly would encourage keyboard players and all musicians to study. I hope that you never stop being a student. Never stop being a student. There's always new software to learn. There's always new tools to acquire. And so,
So let me ask you a question. So if you were, let's say, because I do know lots of people from small churches, small houses of prayer. We were talking about the big fish in the little pond, but there are people, like I know they're teenagers that are just getting started right now. So if you were starting all over again, and you did, let's say you have a smaller, budget, you don't have a large budget, what would you suggest maybe as maybe a kit or something that, like, hey, these would be the 2 or 3 things that I would probably get right away? Besides, like, let's pretend that they already own a MacBook. Let's pretend that they already own the computer.
Yep. GarageBand cost $3.99. FREE, $3.99, and it is fantastic. There are Very few downsides to it. You can produce full on records. It even has vocal tuning in it,
Yeah.
native built-in vocal tuning. So if you're a singer, it'll fix all your flat notes. It's awesome. There are no loss.
And just to kind of put another plug in for it, before I bought Ableton, I was doing all of my backing tracks in GarageBand. Like
Nice.
for my band, I was doing backing tracks in GarageBand.
We live in a day where lack of money is a poor excuse. Lack of money is actually an invalid excuse. Software is free. It's incredible. And hardware is almost free. You know, you can get a decent interface for $100. You can get a decent microphone for $100. $200, and you can track your vocal, put it into free software, and you can produce a full-on record. So there are very few excuses these days. So if I was just getting started, of course, GarageBand would be great. MainStage would be fantastic. That's $30. I would only invest in more money if I see it as a career path.
Yeah. That's what I'm specifically talking about, that they believe that more than 50% of their life, let's just say it that way, more than 50% of what, maybe they'll get a part-time job, but mostly what they want to give themselves to is worship. Like that's mostly what they want to do. Yeah,
you want to be as resourced as well as possible if you see this as being a career path or a lifelong vision. Why wouldn't you? Why would you half-heart it?
Yeah.
When you know that this is what you're called to. So you might as well go all out.
Yeah.
Go big or go home. And so the only reason why you'd want to spend more money is if you get bored. Yeah. Honestly, if you get bored. If you need continual inspiration, that's where you put the greenback, the money down to continue to stay inspired. And that is an endless ocean of money.
As a producer, I understand this.
Yes, also endless ocean of inspiration. Yeah. I know money can't bring happiness, but money does bring inspiration. I will guarantee that. Money does bring inspiration, because as you purchase new software, you're going to, with one note on some of these software packages, one note is going to unlock something in you that you didn't know was ever in there.
Like Omnisphere, every single patch.
Yep.
You open Omnisphere, which is very expensive. It's a very expensive virtual synthesizer. Virtual instrument. But I'll tell you what, each of those patches, you press a button and you're like, wow, I can express something that I was not able to express before.
Yeah, that's right. It's not needed, but it's helpful. Plugins is another area. So those are virtual instruments. Plugins, if you're going to be a music producer, is also an endless ocean. You can spend thousands of dollars. Are they necessary? No. But do they help inspire? Yes. Can you paint with black and white colors? Yes. Can you paint more dynamically if you add some red and some blue and some green? Yes.
Or different brushes.
Yes. So it's not like you can't get something done. It's just, you want to be more inspired. Then that's when you drop some money. So, but don't feel the pressure that you have to drop money. I think it's a misconception that we always have the latest and greatest with that.
That's good. So get it. So just to kind of lay it out, get a good computer, or get something you can actually get a controller. Most pianos that even churches have right now, even the cheapest, like the cheapest Casio that's $200, or even a controller if you're just going to be at home, you can get controllers for pretty cheap now. Keyboard controllers, MIDI controllers. You have have a cheap interface. You really don't need much now.
That's right.
Like you said, the entry barrier is much smaller than when you got started, and especially when I got started.
Yeah.
Like things were very expensive when I first started, and for my uncle and whatever, it was even more expensive.
Yeah.
And then potentially, I think, having GarageBand, or even spending $30, having MainStage. And honestly, I think like what Ableton Intro, is it Ableton Lite or Ableton Intro? Are they the same thing? Am I just getting my terms wrong?
I'm not sure. I have the Ableton Suite.
That's what I have. That's what I'm saying. Like I have Suite, so I never have to worry about it. But but I think it's Ableton Lite or Ableton Intro. Some of the controllers that you buy come with Ableton for free. Like it automatically, like you could spend like, hey, mom, dad, whatever, I'm just going to spend $200, and it comes with the program. And honestly, at that point, there are so many free packs and so many free things and free samples and this, that, and the other that you can do. That's awesome. So, so if you, as we're kind of wrapping this up, if you had, one piece of advice that if you had to go, back in time and share with yourself when you were, 10, 15, whatever, let's go back in time. If you were to say, hey, you need to remember this one thing, or hey, do this one thing, this will guarantee you success. Don't do this thing, do this thing. right? You know what I mean? Or this will help you in the long run with where you're at right now, that potentially this could be good advice for maybe somebody who's starting.
Yeah. I've been very fortunate. I was born at the right place at the right time, grew up with the right people. Um, I think just general life mottos, which is don't be too hard on yourself. It's okay to fail. Also, work really, really hard. Don't be lazy. Laziness will get you nowhere. And yes, and stay inspired.
Yeah.
And if you're not inspired, find inspiration.
Yeah.
If you're not inspired, find inspiration. Chase it. Do what you got to do to go get inspired.
Mm. Yeah. Don't pick up that dollar on the ground. That wasn't a good idea. I just
Yeah, I don't know about that.
Yeah, no, I'm just messing. People sometimes like I have that very specific piece of advice for myself. It's like, oh no, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
That's great. So so Luke, where can people find you online?
Sure. LukeHendrickson.com is my personal page, and that just is a little discography of some albums I've worked on. I also have an Insta and Facebook, The Luke Hendy, Hendy, I also work with a company called Production Online.
Yeah, plug that. Plug some of the I know that you guys have some some courses, and you guys have lots of stuff. Plug that, and I'll put it in the show notes as well.
Sure. Productiononline.com is a resource for people in the production world. So it's not necessarily for people who are wanting to songwrite. It's for people who are wanting to, do lighting, sound, video, sound design, stuff like that.
Which I'll tell you what, if you are in the worship world and in a small church, that Venn diagram of how many people have that crossover of being the musician guy and being the production guy,
yeah.
You know what I mean? That tends to grow. So I know there's a lot of people that would benefit from what you have.
I have content on there talking about my entire keyboard workflow.
Awesome.
How we produce records with Bethal Music in the keyboard world. And then I also have a resource on there for our live streaming. So if anybody has seen Bethal or Bethal Music's live worship, it's done through a template that I produced, and I made it as a resource available for anybody, and any church can mix on the exact same Pro Tool session or Logic session that we use.
Oh, wow.
And they can just implement it into their own church.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so it's been a fun resource.
That's awesome. And what's that website called?
Productiononline.com.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Luke, it's been great having you with the conversation. I love catching up with you, and yeah, thank you so much. Like I said, I'll put it in the show notes. If you like this episode, be sure to give me a thumbs up and comment and give me a 5-star review. And Luke,
thanks for the opportunity, Nathan.
Dude, you're awesome. See you later, bud.
All right, see you, buddy. Bye-bye.
If you've enjoyed the podcast, think about giving it a review or 5 stars, a like, or a share. For more information, visit modernpsalmist.com.